for your aircraft at dynon.aero.
In a world of ancient avionics, one Seattle company is breaking all the rules. Now in airplanes everywhere, coming soon to your panel. There's a reason, pilots. Fly Dynon.
Rated A for your airplane.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another great segment of Spirit of Aviation Week content. I'm Kyle Ludwig, coming to you from EAA headquarters in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Today we have a great young aviator with us on the show, planning some big adventures over the next couple of years. We'll talk to him about that. Let's welcome to the show Trevor Semino. Trevor, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Kyle. It's an honor to be here and be able to take part in Spirit of Aviation Week.
Absolutely, we're happy to have you. Trevor, let's jump right into it. Tell us about what's behind you, the sectional chart, and what's kind of made you famous, ChartitAll products. Tell us about how that got started.
Famous is a strong word. I appreciate that. But yeah, you may have noticed the aeronautical chart background behind me. So I am a 17-year-old student pilot based out of Orlando, Florida, and I have had a love for aviation for as long as I can remember, really, and I actually attribute it to the space program. Growing up in Central Florida, I had Kennedy Space Center in my backyard. Grew up at the end of the shuttle program. We pretty much saw every single launch until it retired in 2011. And so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an astronaut and go into space. Eventually, though, with the space shuttle retiring and Elon Musk wasn't really around at that time, I did some research and discovered a lot of astronauts started out in general aviation. And that's how I found GA, and I became instantly hooked. My parents actually surprised me with a Young Eagles flight, an EAA Young Eagles flight on my 10th birthday, and a Piper Cub, which is still to this day my favorite airplane. It may not be great for cross countries, but it is a true airplane. I love the Piper Cub. And so I did my first flight, and that was it. I was instantly hooked. And then I realized, well, I'm going to need to find a way to pay for this if I want to pursue this as a career, because I have two of the most incredibly supportive parents ever. But flight training was just not a reality financially for us, and as it is for so many. And so when I was 11 years old, I started a company actually to pay for it, and that company is called ChartitAll, and we create all of the custom sectional chart products that you see all over social media and at AirVenture and all over at air shows and fly-ins. So our leggings, our shirts, socks, coffee mugs, phone cases, all sorts of fun things, and that's the company that I created really to fund flight training and then ultimately college as well.
So we'll get to the flight training and college parts in a bit, but you have to tell us, what is the most printed or most purchased sectional chart for ChartitAll product?
Sure. So everything is customized, so you can choose which airport you want, but our most popular destination is actually Oshkosh, Wisconsin, with AirVenture every year. We get a lot of small airports and private grass strips and airports and things like that, but Oshkosh is definitely our most popular airport.
No surprise there. So you started ChartitAll to fund your flight training. Let's talk about your flight training for a second, Trevor. So where are you in the process of training now?
Absolutely. So I just turned 17 2 weeks ago. I had aimed to take my check ride on my 17th birthday, but unfortunately weather and scheduling just didn't work out. So it's actually just a few days from now. So I'll be taking my private pilot check ride very, very shortly, and then instrument shortly after that as well. But leading up to that, I actually received a glider flight training scholarship when I was 14, went through glider flight training, which was incredible, and soloed a glider at 14, then transitioned into powered aircraft and fly a single-engine Cessna 172P model classic airplane, and I actually soloed last year on my 16th birthday.
So tell us about both of those solos. Solo and a glider, 14 years old, a bit different than solo in the 172 at 16, but tell us about both those solos in that moment in your life. It's obviously pivotal.
Absolutely, and those were two life-changing moments for sure. There's nothing like being up solo in an airplane, or even a glider for that matter. And I found the glider solo to be especially unique because it's incredibly quiet. If you've ever flown a glider, you know how quiet it can get up there. You don't have an engine. It's just you and Mother Nature and thermals hoping that you can stay aloft for more than 15 or 20 minutes. And so it's incredibly peaceful and rewarding and just true flying, and I absolutely love it. And then with the 172, it was definitely, I think we all kind of have that maybe a little nervous feeling before your first solo. I had the same feeling. Then as soon as I lined the airplane up on center line, power all the way forward set, and as soon as I rotated, it just felt natural and right, and I just loved every second of it.
So Trevor, tell us about what the favorite part of your flight training journey has been?
Absolutely. I would have to say cross-country flying. It's great staying in the pattern and going through maneuvers. Those are the things that are going to save your life. But there's nothing like being able to fly, especially on a solo cross-country, out, whether it's to lunch, because that's the kind of flying that you'll be doing with friends and family. That's what's great about general aviation. So cross-country flight training was definitely my favorite part of flight training.
And you have done a lot of cross-country flying. And it's not just for flight training. It's not just to knock out the few requirements that are in the FARs to get your certificate. You can actually do it and have fun doing it. So tell us about a few of those adventures. You just got back from one to the Tetons, but tell us about some of your early ones. I know you've been to Triple Tree. You've been up to Oshkosh with one of EAA's great volunteers, the North 40. Tell us about some of those adventures you've already taken.
Absolutely. I've been super fortunate to just have really great friends in within the industry and contacts that I've made, and just super grateful for some really cool cross-country flying opportunities. And so you mentioned definitely some of the highlights, Triple Tree. Actually, Jessica Veruda, who some of you may know, very good friend of mine, we flew a Cessna 150D from Florida to Triple Tree in South Carolina. It was a long day, but it was well worth it. Definitely a learning experience on that trip. Flying to Oshkosh last year for the first time. I've driven to Oshkosh, flown commercial Oshkosh, but last year was the first time I actually flew a small airplane. It was a Piper Lance with, you mentioned Ken Jordan, who is one of EAA's fantastic volunteers. He actually runs the North 40. So he invited me along for that trip. Incredible. That was so far the longest trip I have taken. And then just recently, actually just a few days ago, I returned from Jackson Hole in the Grand Tetons doing a training trip. It was actually I was doing some mountain flying training and getting some really good experience with cross-country flying. And it was a really rewarding trip because we had to deal with weather, with NOTAMs, with all sorts of things that kind of threw curveballs at our plan, and learning how to handle those things and adapt to changing situations. Being flexible in aviation is key. That was definitely a great learning experience on this past trip.
So being a Mooney owner myself, I have to ask you, what's the transition been like from gliders, Cessna 172, and Lance, and then the Mooney, which is, one of the higher performance piston singles out there? What's that been like, Trevor?
Absolutely. My friend, very good friend Arnaldo, who some of you may know from Aviation 101, has an incredible Mooney. It's an M20K turbo-charged Mooney, and it is a heck of an airplane. It's a lot of airplane, and you have to be on it, no doubt. But it's been a great transition, and I'm, like I said, super grateful to have had the opportunity to fly everything from gliders to Lance and a Mooney, and then 172s and Archers and everything in between. So absolutely, it's a challenging transition, but I love everything about it. That's one of my favorite parts about aviation is all of the challenges that it has to offer, and overcoming those things, learning as much as I can. It's fantastic.
Let's talk about some of those challenges, Trevor. So each flight is different, and that's why a lot of us love flying, right? It presents a different challenge to you. No flight's the same, and we always have a story to tell after it. Everyone is different. So tell us, what has been the most challenging part in your aviation career so far?
Absolutely. Well, besides the basics of financing and figuring out how to make it happen, in terms of actual flight training, definitely, I would say crosswind landings, definitely struggled with in the beginning. But I think learning to become flexible and learning to deviate from a plan. I'm very organized. I like to know what's coming. I like to know what's happening. And so learning to adjust for that. Had a lot of this on the last Jackson Hole trip. We ended up in Vidalia, Georgia for a night because of some problems that we had with one of our instruments. Minor fix, but had us ending up having to stay overnight. So especially understanding weather patterns. Weather theory was not one of my strong points going into flight training. I could tell you all the flight controls on the airplane and all the aerodynamics, but understanding weather theory and weather patterns and how all those things work, that's critical when you're flying halfway across the country. And so that was definitely a challenge to overcome and learn, but very rewarding, because when you understand those kinds of things, it allows you to do things like fly to Jackson Hole, Wyoming from Florida, which is a massive trip.
So we've talked, Trevor, already about some of the challenges in flight training, you getting some advanced training in the mountains and high-performance airplanes. Let's talk about an epic adventure and a challenge that you're planning now. And around the world flight and Earth Rounder you will be. Tell us about that flight that you're planning to embark on next year.
That's right. That is the plan. I just announced earlier today, actually, that I am flying solo around the world in March of 2021, aiming to set the world record by becoming the youngest person to fly solo around the world at 17 years old. Now, you hear that, 17-year-old pilot flying around the world. you have some questions, right? So this is a massive project that I've actually been working on for the last year and almost a year and a half, putting together 3 separate teams and really working to make this safe, reliable, and just an incredible mission, and something I'm really excited to bring you guys along. We mentioned the world record, but there's a lot more to this trip than just that. As I'm traveling around the world, I will be visiting elementary, middle, and high schools, and I'll actually be hosting aviation seminars and workshops, hands-on workshops, giving presentations to students all around the world, promoting not just aviation careers, but STEM careers in general, entrepreneurship, basically everything that I've had, all the skills that I have learned and all the opportunities that I've had to get to where I'm at in aviation. I want to be able to share with other students and inspire them to find creative ways to pursue their aviation dreams, because it is so worth it. And I think combining that with an around the world flight, it just combines everything that I love about aviation: the challenge, the travel, the adventure, and then education, which is a major passion of mine.
So you're not the first person, Trevor, to an attempt an around the world flight. Many have done it before you, but there are many challenges. I think a lot of people look at it as a long cross-country trip. They might look at the segments across the Atlantic or the Pacific or other segments that you might embark on as the daunting things. But tell us about some of the challenges of actually planning this. You have 3 teams working on it, you said. Tell us about some of the challenges and hurdles that you're facing to actually make this dream a reality.
Absolutely. So when I first decided I wanted to do this, I was a 15-year-old student pilot. I hadn't even soloed yet in a powered aircraft. So I had a lot of work to go. I had a lot of work ahead of me. I still have a lot of work ahead of me now. And so I immediately reached out to people who have done this. A very good friend now, Matt Guthmiller, who formerly set the world record as the youngest person to fly solo around the world. I believe he was 19 when he did it. And so I just started reaching out to him, a few others, to just understand what is it going to take to actually do this. Obviously, there's the financial side, the business side, and I've learned it's just as much of a business challenge as it is an aviation challenge. And so between those two things, I figured out, okay, this is what I need to do to make this happen. This is something that I'm interested in and willing to pursue. And I met with Matt, and we went over everything. And after that, I said, okay, you know what? This is something that, with my position, with where I'm set up, with training, with everything, I think this is something I could pursue. I'm going to give it a go and see what happens. And a year and a half later, here I am. And so you mentioned the 3 teams, and what I've done is I immediately formed the flight team, which are comprised of former around-the-world pilots, my mentors in aviation, flight instructors, aviation professionals who are really helping guide me through all of not just the training, but the flight planning, everything in and of itself, because I am confident in my abilities, but I want everything cross-checked multiple times. It's a massive project and a massive trip. So that's the flight team. There's the education team that I'm working with, and they're actually comprised of NASA educators at Kennedy Space Center that I'm working with to develop the curriculum and the workshops and the seminars that I'll be bringing around the world with me. And then there's the creative team who are working with to develop all of the social media side of things. I am planning on sharing the entire adventure, not just the trip, but all of the training leading up to it on social media, on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, even TikTok now, because that's a thing. And so getting all of that organized, it really is an incredible project that has been nonstop. And I'm super excited to be at the point where I can officially announce it publicly now, and we can go into more details too. I'm sure you have questions about training and everything like that.
So let's hit on a couple things here. First off, there's a lot of moving pieces to flying around the world, but furthermore, you're going to stop in a lot of places around the world. Is there any way or any one city in particular that you're more excited to see than the others, maybe?
That's a difficult question, because I've been to Canada and I've been to Honduras. I've never been to Europe, I've never been to Asia. So I've done a lot of traveling in the United States, but I have to say all of them. I'll answer that question next year, and I'll say what my favorite one is. But a few that do stand out to me: Cairo, Egypt, Karachi, Pakistan, Abu Dhabi. I'm really looking forward to Kiribati, Christmas Island in the middle of the Pacific, super remote. One of my favorite things about aviation is the adventure that it brings with it, especially with this kind of flying. And I'm just so excited to experience different cultures, different food, meet so many people. I mean, talking to former around the world pilots, the highlights of the trip for them have been the people and the culture and just experiencing all that. That's what I'm definitely most looking forward to.
So if you joined the session late, we're talking to Trevor Simoneau, the founder of ChartitAll, which he actually founded to fund his flight training. A pretty cool story. We're talking about his endeavor to become the youngest Earth rounder on the planet. Trevor, to go around the world, you need an airplane. And before the segment, we were talking about an airplane that you're kind of settling on right now. Can you tell our viewers today what that airplane might be?
Absolutely. That was one of those challenges that I faced when I first decided I wanted to do this. Well, I needed an airplane. Then I needed funding for that airplane. So putting all that together has been the project for the last year and a half. And I have found pretty much the perfect airplane. It's a 1977 Cessna 210 Mike model, full glass panel, G500, 750, 650, JPI engine monitor, the whole shebang, SATCOM equipped already. Pretty much ready to go, just need to add the ferry tank and a few other things, and it is a beautiful airplane. So it's currently living in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'll be bringing it back to Florida very soon and starting all of the training that will be leading up to the world flight. So finishing up instrument and then moving right into realistic instrument cross-country flying. Flying around the world, and we touched on this a little bit earlier, is not like flying to Flagler for lunch or dinner with friends. There's a lot more to it in terms of paperwork, in terms of flight planning, understanding things like weather and just radio communications. They're all so critical to a flight like this. And so I'm doing all of that training in terms of realistic instrument cross-country flying. I have several trips planned over the next year, doing a coast-to-coast out to California and back, doing a trip to Greenland with Matt Guthmiller, the former youngest pilot to fly solo around the world. So we're doing some oceanic crossing training. I'm actually doing survival training down in Lakeland, Florida as well. So kind of hitting on everything. Just got back and did some mountain flying experience, things like that.
Preparation is definitely key to success in aviation, and especially a trip like this.
Absolutely.
You know, when you look at the trip, there are so many daunting and challenging things. We hit on a few of them earlier. In your mind, what is the one challenge that sticks out in your mind as, wow, that's going to be a hurdle to overcome with this adventure?
Definitely the long legs and the oceanic crossings. You know, those are probably everyone's first thought when you think about flying around the world. Well, how are you going to get across the Pacific, right? And so those kinds of things are flights that take a lot of preparation, a lot of work, and flying around the world in and of itself offers a really unique set of parameters, really unique challenges that I've already had to go overcome, that I will continue to have to overcome as the trip moves forward. And so everything from, okay, I want to go to this city, but there are 5 airports in the city. Which one has the least expensive landing fees and I'm not going to be charged $1,500 in ramp fees when I'm there. You know, I'm super grateful, and we're super fortunate in the United States to basically be able to fly pretty much anywhere and handle things pretty easily. And that's not the case in most countries around the world in terms of airspace, flight plans, and VFR and to IFR. There are all sorts of really specific regulations and things that are unique to each country. And so transitioning from country to country is definitely a daunting challenge. And fortunately, I'll be working with 2 really great companies to help out with the paperwork process, and then as well as just cross-checking and really setting everything up for success. That's my motto with this trip, is not only do I have the team that without their authorization I won't be going, but I'm doing this in a way that I believe is safe, doable, and sets up the mission for success. Because at the end of the day, flying from Honolulu, Hawaii to San Diego, California, which could be a 14-hour trip with strong headwinds in a Cessna 210, is a daunting challenge. But that's additional training I'll be doing, is just flying really long legs, learning how to manage a ferry tank and mixture and everything like that for those kinds of flights. And
not only managing the airplane, but managing the physiological side of it, the body, which is so key to these long legs, even in airliners.
Hours and staying on it and with it. There are lots of different things that you can do. Even things as simple as just getting some motion with your legs and not sitting down for too long. Deep vein thrombosis, DVTs, major problems, even on shorter legs. So considering all of those factors in every flight, not just the around the world flight, but all of the training that I'm doing as well.
Well, Trevor, this is so exciting. And you mentioned earlier you're going to cover this all on social media. For those watching today, where can they follow your journey online?
Absolutely. So, as you said, I'll be sharing all the training, all of the trip itself. We just kind of hit the tip of the iceberg. And again, we probably still have lots of questions that you want to ask me. So you can follow along on YouTube. It's at youtube.com/Trevor Semino. TrevorSimoneau. You can just Google my name in YouTube and you'll find it. So sharing flight vlog, adventure style videos, covering some technical aspects, some really just cool destinations that I'll be going to in the training and the trip. And then also on Instagram and Twitter as well. It's just both are just my name, Trevor Simoneau. So you can go follow me on there, follow along on the entire adventure. That's one of the most exciting parts for me, is bringing the entire aviation community along for something like this. It's a massive adventure, and it's something that I'm really looking forward to having just the opportunity and the privilege to take hopefully as many people as possible along for the ride.
So Trevor, you mentioned earlier you're a consummate planner. You're always putting plans together for what's next. So tell us about what you're planning to do after the Earth-rounding flight next year.
Absolutely. So the project itself is actually called Fly Infinite Horizons. And long-term plan is I would like to create some sort of foundation, organization that's focused on aviation education. As we mentioned earlier, I had no financial way to pay for my flight training, so I had to start a company to make that happen. And so that's the case for so many other students. And while there are so many incredible scholarships out there, I want to be able to contribute to that. So I want to start being able to offer scholarships through ChartitAll. I'll have all of my flight training covered. I don't want to stop that. I want to be able to start offering other scholarships, continuing to be funded through ChartitAll, offer aviation education resources to teachers, to students, beginning at the elementary level, and basically going through that all the way until you can solo an airplane and get your private pilot certificate. And so really, that's what I'm passionate about. I'm all about education and hopefully inspiring as many students as we can to get into aviation and really just become familiar with how incredible and unique the industry is. Because, you know, for me, neither of my parents fly. I don't come from an aviation background, and it was incredible to discover this really special community of people and airplanes, and I've loved every second of it, and I want to be able to make that as accessible as possible for as many students and people of any age as possible.
And you definitely share a common goal with EAA as we try to break down the barriers for folks to get in aviation as well. You've mentioned that education is important a couple times to you. We talked earlier before we started the interview, Trevor, that you've selected a school of higher education to go to after this as a double graduate from that institution as well. Tell the viewers where you're also going to college.
Yes, sir. That would be Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach, Florida. I'll be majoring in aerospace engineering, and then moving on from there.
And that's fantastic to hear. Go Eagles. For the folks that are watching today that are saying, wow, Trevor, very accomplished already at 16 years old, they might also be 16 or younger. What advice do you have for those folks to continue along towards their aviation dreams?
Sure. I mean, the best advice I can give anyone of any age would be to network. Networking is absolutely key within not just aviation, in any industry, but what you'll find is as you start to make friends in the industry, you'll learn that for most people, someone helped them out when they were younger, and they want to be able to pay that forward in some way, whether it's by connecting you to scholarships, taking you flying, just whatever it may be. And that's something that I've had so many incredible people do for me. It's something I can hardly wait to do for other students. Like one of the things I'll be doing as well next year is doing Young Eagles flights in the 210, the same airplane I'll be flying around the world. And so those kinds of things. So go to air shows, talk to people, talk to exhibitors, just share your story. You know, you never know who you're going to meet, what opportunities may arise from it. You'll make really great friends, and don't be afraid to talk to people because it is well worth it. And it's just definitely worth it. So that would be my best advice. Networking is key.
Trevor, we love the enthusiasm, and I'm sure the viewers today loved your advice. We just have a couple minutes left here in the interview today. For those watching, do you have any closing remarks or comments that you'd like to make?
No, I just, thank you to EAA and to you, Kyle, and for everything that you all have done. You've been a major part of my aviation journey, and I'm super excited to continue that with flying around the world. Like I said, if you're interested in following along on that journey and all of the unique challenges that come with it, definitely go follow me on YouTube and Instagram, Twitter. You can follow the entire adventure there. And again, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, whether it's about flying around the world, entrepreneurship, getting started in aviation. I'm always happy to chat to anyone about those kinds of things. Because believe me, I've been there. I've had many obstacles to overcome getting to where I'm at in aviation, and I'm more than happy to help anyone out in any way that I can. So don't be afraid to reach out.
Trevor, awesome stuff. Thanks for joining us today. And we look forward to seeing you after your trip at Oshkosh 2021.
Absolutely. Plan on being there for sure.
Fantastic. For all those of you watching, thank you for joining us today. Again, if you want to see more of Trevor's great adventures, go follow him on social media at Trevor Semino. Trevor, thanks again for being with us. We appreciate it.
Absolutely, Kyle. Thank you.
All right, everybody, see you soon.
Thank you for joining us on Spirit of Aviation Week. Coming up at 1:30 on Stream 3, it's Dr. Steph